Good morning, Chair Cabaldon. I just want to let you know we do have a quorum. The time is 10:02.
All right, since Jessica just reminded me that we're 2 minutes late, we do have a quorum. Let's call to order the October 1st meeting of the SACOG Transportation Committee. Thanks everybody for joining us. In accordance with the Governor's Executive Order, we're meeting online and open to public participation online. I know Jessica will cover this in a moment as well. And in fact, why don't we go to that now? Jessica, can you give us our context and instructions for the day, both for ourselves and for members of the public who are with us today?
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. For everyone tuning in, this meeting is being recorded and will be made available on SACOG's YouTube channel. All presentations provided at this meeting can be found on SACOG's website. For our members of the public who wish to make a comment, you can notify us by pressing *9 if participating telephonically, or by selecting raise hand if participating by computer. To our committee members, we ask that you mute yourselves when not speaking to eliminate any background noise. And when you're ready to speak, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 if phoning in to alert the chair. Chair Cabaldon, would you like me to call roll right now, or
Yes,
move to pledge of allegiance?
Why don't we do the roll call first and then we'll go to the pledge.
Okay, sounds great. Director Harris?
I need to call you back. I'm on a Zoom call.
All right. Director Harris is here. And just for information, I do have to log off at 10:30 to attend a medical appointment with my son.
Thank you, Director Harris. Director Joyner?
Here.
Director Peters?
Here.
Director Samayoa?
Here.
Director Sander?
Here.
Director Saylor?
Here.
Director Chenier?
Here.
Director Slowey?
Here.
Director Veerkamp?
Here.
Vice Chair Jennings?
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Soon?
Here.
And Chair Cabaldon?
Here.
And ex officio, Sue Tacker for ex officio member Benepal?
I'm here.
Thank you, Sue.
Terrific. So quorum is present. So let's move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Vice Chair Jennings, would you mind leading us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, and justice for all.
and justice for all.
Thank you. Then we're going to immediately adjourn as the SACOG Transportation Committee and convene as the Capital Valley Regional Service Authority for Freeways and Expressways Committee. So if we may substitute the roll call and now conduct the roll call for those members of the SAFE Committee that are not members of the SACOG Transportation Committee.
Yes, Director Nguyen?
Present.
Thank you. Director Young? Oh, I saw your lips move, Director Young, but it looks like your sound might be off.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a quorum for this committee as well. So we'll substitute the Pledge of Allegiance as well. Madam Clerk, do we have public communications for the CVR Safe Committee?
We do not have any for CVR Safe, no.
All right, then we'll proceed to the consent agenda, which is item 1, the minutes from our last meeting. Is there any corrections or is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Approval, Joyner.
This mute thing is not working for me right now.
There you are, okay. All right, so it was moved, Madam Clerk, I don't know, all I heard is Mr. Joyner.
I think I heard Director Soon and then Director Joyner. Is that accurate?
That'll work.
Okay, all right, let's go with that. All
Okay.
right. Okay, then, seeing no questions or discussion, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll on the consent agenda?
Yes. Director Harris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Joyner,
Yes.
Director Peters,
Yes.
thank you. Director Samayoa,
Aye.
Director Sander,
Aye.
Director Saylor,
Aye.
Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Slowey,
Aye.
Director Veerkamp,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings,
Aye.
Vice Chair Soon,
Aye.
Director Nguyen,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
Chair Cabaldon.
Aye. So that motion carries. So now we'll proceed to item 2, which is an amendment to fiscal year 2021 budget for the SAFE.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Today we have an amendment to this current fiscal year CVR SAFE budget. The main changes, and you'll see these on the attachment page, are a reduction in the estimates for vehicle registration revenue. This is based on our finance staff tracking the revenues that are coming into the CVR SAFE area from vehicle registrations. And right now, from May through August, they're down a little over 10%. What we've done is reduce the estimate approximately 15% from our original one for fiscal year 2020-2021 to try and encompass those reductions in what's coming in to more accurately reflect the revenue we have for the program. And we've also reduced the overall program expenditures by a little over $37,000 by shifting funds around. We've reduced the amount of funds right now for this year for our ITS Architecture and Future Technology Planning project, because right now there just isn't that need from our jurisdictions. They don't have that desire to be implementing the ITS projects right now. But we're looking at reinstating those funds for the next fiscal year when hopefully next year that the jurisdictions will have more staff time to do that implementation work for intelligent transportation systems that we know they want to do. We also carried over funds from 2019-20 for the big data project. We were initially estimated using a large amount of CVR SAFE funds for that project. We had some sunsetting other funds that were going to that project that we needed to spend instead. So the difference from that in the budget, we've increased that budget for this year and decreased what was used in fiscal year 2019-20 for that project to reflect that change. That's all I have for you today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the amendment before you.
Are there questions for Barbara? See any raised hands or mics unmuting? So is there then a motion on the item?
Supervisor Nguyen, I'll make a motion to accept the amendment.
Thank you.
Or it's been moved by Supervisor Nguyen and seconded by Councilmember Suen. Seeing no further discussion then, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll on item 2?
Yes. Director Harris,
Yes.
thank you. Director Joyner,
Yes.
Director Peters,
Yes. Yes.
thank you. Director Samayoa,
Yes.
Director Sander,
Aye.
Director Saylor,
Aye.
Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Slowey,
Aye.
Director Veerkamp,
Aye.
Director Nguyen,
Yes.
Director Young,
Yes.
thank you. Vice Chair Jennings,
Yes.
Vice Chair Soon,
Aye.
Chair Cabaldon.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, so that motion carries, and that just completes our CVR SAFE committee business. So thanks to both of our colleagues from San Joaquin County. And with that, we will adjourn the CVR SAFE committee and return to our meeting as the SACOG Transportation Committee. Okay, so for SACOG Transportation Committee, Madam Clerk, do we have public communications from any person wishing to address the committee on an item that is not on our agenda?
Chair Cabaldon, I am not seeing any raised hands from the attendees, and I have not received any advanced emails for public comment.
All right, then. Thank you very much. We'll proceed to the consent agenda then, which is items 1 through 3. Any questions or removals from the consent calendar?
Move approval, Slowey. Second, Chenier.
All right, seeing no questions or objections or discussion, then Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll on the consent agenda?
Absolutely. And thank you very much for mentioning your names there when you motioned.
Have to
Direct-
do that. I forget who I am so often.
Thanks. It was very helpful. Director Harris,
Yes.
Director Joyner,
Yes.
Director Peters,
Yes.
Director Samayoa. Can I have Director Samayoa say that again?
That was aye.
Thank you. Director Sander,
Aye.
Director Saylor,
Aye.
Director Chenier,
Aye.
Director Slowey,
Aye.
Director Veerkamp,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings,
Aye.
Vice Chair Soon,
Aye.
and Chair Cabalden.
Aye. All right, so the consent agenda is adopted. So now we'll proceed to our regular action items, and welcome again to the what will be the most chill Transportation Committee meeting of 2020. And item 4 is up next, which is approval of the 2021 delivery plan process. Mr. Caceres.
Yes, good morning. I'm Jose Luis Caceres. I lead the programming and project delivery, the project delivery and MTIP team. The action before the committee is that staff recommends that the Transportation Committee recommend that the board approve the 2021 delivery plan process. I'm going to go over the background, talk about how this works and why this works, and then I'll close. So the background is, for those of you who've been on the board for a while, you've seen this because SACOG has had a pretty similar project delivery plan process since I started back in 2001. You would think that if we were doing it the same way for so long, it's ready for disruption. But I've played with this and tried out different things, and this delivery plan process just works. We've certainly made changes and improvements over time. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how it works. Next slide. So one of the things is SACOG, we treat delivery failure as something certainly to be avoided, but as something that is natural, often unavoidable, but certainly mitigatable. And I'm going to go over that. Next slide. We have a hybrid, thank you. We have a hybrid kind of reservation and first come, first serve system. And I'm going to talk about how that works. This is a slide from 2019. So kind of just pretend 2019 is 2021. Basically, the first block of yellow is the current year, that would be 2021. This block of yellow Legos represents projects that we would expect would deliver, that is, start federally reimbursable work in the next year. And really, we're talking about projects funded with Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program funds, CMAQ, and Regional Surface Transportation Program funds, RSTP. We survey the sponsors, your own agencies, and we ask those agencies and transit operators and Caltrans when they plan on delivering. And usually they give us pretty ambitious schedules that they're going to come in the current year. And if we operated a pure reservation system, we would expect all of these projects to come in during the year. But the reality is that they don't. Next, please. What ends up happening is some projects can make it, but they can't. And so what we do is after February 1, Robert, next, please. After February 1, we have a free-for-all system. So from October to February 1, only projects in the current year have first priority. But after February 1, any CMAQ or RSTP project in any of the years of the TIP may come in to obligate, that is, start federally reimbursable work, to take up space that would normally have been reserved for current year projects. Current projects still have equal priority as well, come in, but what we're trying to do is to use all our federal funding for our region. We're aiming for program delivery. That's projects to deliver. We don't shame them. We don't punish them. We actually thank them because they make space for your other projects that want to happen earlier and faster. We know that all these projects will deliver. Their exact schedule just can change. They're all implementing the MTP. If some of them deliver a little earlier and some a little later, we're going to catch that up. Now, what do we do with these projects that fail to deliver? Next, we have to carry them over, but we don't allow them to simply bump all the other projects back. They don't get like, we have to put them in all the spaces that were created by other projects that move forward. Now, one thing we do after May 1 is we look for creative solutions. This means these are projects, we look for projects that need CMAQ and RSTP. An example project would be a project that the board programmed in the STIP or that Placer or EDCTC, PCTPA or EDCTC programmed out that needs to borrow CMAQ or RSTP. We will loan these projects CMAQ or RSTP, but we expect them to pay us back an equal amount. Usually they give us back the STIP funds, but in some cases they give us back local dollars, which we can then use in our funding rounds. You can close the PowerPoint. So that's how this works. And that's how we handle advancements and delivery failure. I want to tell you why this works. When we treat delivery failure as just a natural course, the environmental can take longer, the right-of-way can take longer. What we do is we create opportunities for advancements. Some projects happen in a big old hurry. They can move really quickly. And this dynamic process has worked. We have nothing but high levels of satisfaction among your member agencies, cities and counties, and transit operators. To make sure that it continues to work, we meet monthly with the City of Sacramento and County of Sacramento and Caltrans local cities. And we meet quarterly with all the other jurisdictions of all the counties. We meet with them on a county by county basis, so in these small little groups. When we talk about struggles to deliver, we talk about funding opportunities, we troubleshoot individual projects and their situation, and probably most importantly, we remind them of delivery deadlines that are coming up. Because of this, we have high levels of relationship, high levels of satisfaction, high levels of delivery. I can tell you, and that's not what this item is, but this year we're probably tops in the state in project delivery. Every dollar that belongs to SACOG has gone out to transportation projects. The overall goal here has been to implement MTPSCS, and we are doing that effectively. So that's the action before this committee to continue this delivery plan process, and I'll close and take any questions.
Thank you, Jose. This is Councilmember Soon, or Director Soon, standing in for Chair Cabalden, who had to leave due to an emergency. Are there any questions from the board members for Jose? I don't see any questions here on my video.
Move approval from Slowey. Saylor, second.
All right, I have a motion from Director Slowey and a second from Director Saylor. Before we do that, are there any, Jessica, are there anybody who wishes to comment from the public on this?
Hi, Vice Chair Soon. It looks like no one in our attendees list is raising their hand, and I have not received any advance email comments, so no public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, if there's no other comments from the board members, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. Please prepare to give me your vote. Director Harris?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Joyner?
Aye.
Director Peters?
Aye.
Director Samayoa?
Aye.
Director Sander?
Aye.
Director Saylor?
Aye.
Director Chenier?
Aye.
Director Slowey?
Aye.
Director Veerkamp?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings?
Aye.
Vice Chair Soon?
Aye.
And Chair Cabalden, I understand, is not with us right now.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, carries, I assume?
Yes, motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to item 5, the 2020 SACOG Regional Funding Round Budget. Mr. Carpenter, I think, is here to present this.
That's right. Well, hey, good morning, Vice Chair Soon and members of the committee. This item, it closely relates to the delivery plan you just acted on. And it's also the next step in launching the 2020 Regional Funding Round. Just nothing has substantively changed from the first draft budget that was shared with you during our August meeting. The estimated revenues, total revenues are the same, and the recommended costs or budget commitments are also held steady. Since August, we have received a few comments from board members and stakeholders that I'll just address as we kind of walk through the material. A few background points I just want to make about the $194 million in revenues that make up the budget. As many of you know, nearly all of these revenues are from federal or state transportation sources, and by that means that they come with a number of restrictions and reporting requirements that we do our best to help our sponsors with. It's also to kind of important to remember that these are forecasted revenues that come with come to SACOG in future years. There's always a bit of uncertainty and predictability challenges of trying to anticipate what will be available 3 or 4 years out. But we do our best to anticipate what the level of funding will be. And we also have ongoing monitoring activities to kind of look at for policy changes in federal or state sources so that we can really, and how they will impact the budget. And we adjust accordingly. Sometimes we've had to make some changes to this budget midstream during a funding round cycle, or have had to kind of rectify at the end the forecasted budget at the beginning and the actual at the end. So stay tuned on that, but I think we feel pretty good about where we're at today with the budget we're bringing forward for your recommendation. Thank you, Robert, for posting table 1. I'm going to be using this table because it summarizes well the different budget levels and commitments that are in the draft budget. A couple of background notes about the table. It provides recommended funding levels by program, and it also offers a really good comparison between this 2-year funding round in 2020 and the last 2 funding rounds, the 2018 funding round and the 2019 funding round. What we anticipate, why we use this 2-year budget, is that we expect we'll have another funding round in 2022. So we'll be doing this again 2 years later after we've found a way to commit the $194 million available now to a set of good projects. Now, in terms of the table, it's organized into 3 key categories. The project-based programs is the first one, and obviously it's the largest one. It's where the bulk of the budget is, and that you see that at the top is where $163.5 million of forecasted commitment are. The policy framework the board adopted last month was focused on the regional program. It's the largest component, but it makes up over 90% of the total funding available. Note that there was a typo in the version of staff report that went out. The total of the competitive share is 90%, not 85%. Now, there's really 2 categories, as we recall from all the discussions that happened over the summer. There's a transformative category, and this is for system expansion projects and for any capital project or project development request, $5 million or greater. And then there's a second category. We call this maintenance and modernization. And this is for non-expansion capital projects and project development requests that are under $5 million in total. So you can see that it's pretty steady between the prior 2-year period and this 2-year period that includes the 2020 funding round. The next program, as you can see, is Green Region. This was a program we had as part of the 2018 funding round. We have folded this into the regional program, projects related to electrification, related to clean air. These are projects that are certainly going to be competitive and included as part of the call for projects for the overall regional program. But you can see how the budget commitments we made 2 years ago are just rolled into the regional program now. Next, you can see innovative mobility. What we recommend here is that it's funded at the same level as in the prior 2-year period, and staff will be bringing forward a 2-year program framework for consideration in the spring, next spring. That will include a great deal of budget detail so you can make your choices about the different elements that comprise that. This includes everything from Civic Lab to TDM initiatives, as well as a new program called the Regional Telework Initiative. On the next line, you'll see a new investment instrument program. This is the established program that we are increasing and now calling the Rural Urban Connections Federal Funds Exchange. It's kind of a mouthful, but it's a really good program that in many ways is about streamlining. Increasing, what this basically does is this provides kind of non-federal revenues to rural and small communities that implement projects sooner and with fewer delivery complications than having to use federal aid money. And we are also just noting that increasing this exchange for 2020, you can see this is a long established program, but we've adding nearly over $400,000 on it. And this will help us expand eligibility beyond the rural counties, Yuba, Sutter, and Yolo that historically have been the recipients for this fund, to also include a number of small communities in the region. And we hope that this will help them provide some critical investments, including road maintenance, and that are not federal aid eligible.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about this topic.
Yes, Mr. Taylor, go ahead.
Thanks. Matt, the name rural or federal exchange puzzles me. So is this actual money, or is this some kind of a, what is this? Is this a funding source, a funding stream, or an accounting gimmick? What is it exactly?
Yeah. I hear the suspicion. Yes, it is actual money. And so this is what this is essentially, Director Saylor. We get money from the federal government that comes to Caltrans. It's federal money. And then we work with Caltrans they basically, because they have a much bigger program, right? It's comprised of sometimes of gas tax revenue, a number of their sources that are non-federal derived, that they basically wash these funds or exchange these funds to make them without all the restrictions that come with federal money. So 1.1 million of the 1.5 million total is from that partnership we have with Caltrans, because we're not large enough to be able to consistently do that annually. And so we're able to work with Caltrans to take, of the total 1.5 budget you see, 1.1 comes from Caltrans doing that washing of the federal funds to be doesn't have all the tail or restrictions that come with federal money. The balance, the 400,000 that make up the 1.5, is the growth increment. And what we're committing to do here at SACOG is that we're confident we can take the federal funds that come to us and do a similar process of washing those $400,000 and getting, you know, local type money back out to our jurisdictions, which include historically your county, YOLO. But what this will also allow is that we know that there's some smaller jurisdictions elsewhere in the region, including Isleton, including Live Oak. We have places that we want to make sure these small communities are able to get access to these benefits that counties have long benefited from.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So you can see that that is one of the programs we also have. Moving on to the next one. Well, I'll stop for just a moment because we went through quite a bit with project-based programs. Any other questions about these investment categories?
Any other questions from the directors at this time?
Great.
Can't
Excellent.
see everybody, so I'm just listening. I don't hear anybody. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, it was the next group is, you can see the line place-based programs. And these are just a bit different from the other category because these are investments that are targeting a specific geography. And the hope here is that the investments we can make in these targeted geographies can really serve as a catalyst for additional private investment or community-based investment. In the case of the first program, the large one, community design, there's a long-established program at SACOG. And the funding typically goes to investments in areas that support infill and can create new travel options. So this program, it's important to note that the funding level, as you can see here, just over 18 million, it's the same, absolute total as it was for the prior 2-year period. But in the next staff report item, you'll be hearing about the community design program for this new funding round. And there are some pretty substantive policy changes. So what this means, or the upshot of all this, is that it may lead to some different mix of the projects that ultimately are funded by community design. So the budget level stays the same, but we look forward to your input on the community design framework that we'll next talk about, because there are some substantive changes in the policy framework that may lead to a different mix of awards that we recommend next spring. And the next line you see here, it's called equity, but the formal program is called the Disadvantaged Communities Pipeline Projects. It's a new place-based program. And the purpose we have here is to engage with these communities to kind of better understand their transportation challenges and together to identify some solutions. What the ultimate goal here is that we really hope that through that bottoms up, work, is that we'll be able to help work with our communities to identify the most impactful projects. And this will be what we call like a shelf of community-led and impactful projects that can be then matched with federal funding opportunities, whether it's improvements around a light rail station, increasing amount of transit service, or maybe it's making improvements to make their corridor safer, that we really hope that this will be a very helpful and impactful project. And obviously this is going to be closely developed in partnership with the board's Race, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group. So look for more details on this later this winter. But we're very excited about standing up this new program in the 2020 funding round. And then finally, after the place-based programs, just the idea of other financial commitments. Right now, this is just limited to really the idea of programming a very small share of our federal and state funds towards ongoing SACOG staff, fund management, and technical assistance efforts. This level of funding is consistent with what our peers do across the state. And the only thing I would just put as a qualification on this is that because we anticipate potentially some changes in the total federal funds available or state funds that we end up programming, and the number of color of money or the type of money shifts over the course of the year, the final totals for this category won't be set right away, but what could very well be quite a bit different when we finalize the budget later this spring. So with that, I'll just pause for a moment. You can see there's quite a bit of stability overall with the prior 2-year period and this 2-year period. They're both very close to 200 million, but you can understand and see there's some interesting changes and updates from what we did last time around. Please let me know any questions or comments you may have.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any questions from the directors?
Yeah, Matt, I got a little confused in the staff report with regard to STIP funding
Yeah.
and the funding of, I'm not sure if you were referring to loans or previous agreements that
Yeah.
were coming off the top and are not visible here in this chart, or if that was referring to something on the chart.
Yeah.
My second question is going to be, the public's going to look at this and say, you just raised our gas tax. You got just, jacked up the taxes on my vehicle. And what do I see happening? Fewer dollars coming to us to build stuff.
Yeah.
How do you explain that situation?
Well, they're both great questions. I'll start with the easier one, the first one, right? So the idea, I think you might be referencing Director Standard to the attachment, which offers some additional background on the 2020 regional funding round, because what it's an attempt to do is just offer a little more context or kind of framing for this issue, is that as many of the veteran board members know, we've experienced a great deal of revenue volatility over the last 10 years. And because that sometimes we've had to make some changes, the funding round budgets midstream or at the very end. And we do see that same kind of, that risk management issue being present right now. And so the idea with that attachment is trying to explain specifically on the state funds that come to the program and the federal funds, where we see some issues that we want to make sure you're aware of early, because they may ultimately lead to some staff updates, recommended updates to this budget. Specific to the STIP funds you're mentioning, we already know right now from what we're hearing from our colleagues and at the state that gas tax revenues are quite a bit down, and that it's really difficult right now to forecast where they're going to go. Because these STIP funds we're talking about that are in this budget are 4 to 5 years out, we have to make sure we're mindful of what they're already telling us might be in the next multi-year STIP. And what that means is that we've taken the 20% estimate they're using right now into our factoring about how much STIP funds we expect will be there. So we've got a 20% decline from what we otherwise would forecast for this budget for the STIP share. But even with that 20% decline, the overall proportion of STIP funds is high in this budget. And it's high because of the loans you mentioned, is that we have a long history here, and this is how it relates to the delivery plan. We have a long history of taking sponsors that get put in the STIP, because the STIP is fairly rigid. You get put into a year that's oftentimes is 4 or 5 years out, but a project sponsor that is eager to deliver that will always be looking for an opportunity for us to match them to federal funds that are available in a year or two. And so we have a long history of taking our guaranteed STIP funding and taking projects out of the STIP, matching them with federal funds now. But all that does is it builds up our reserve, or builds up how much STIP capacity we have for future years. And at some point, we can't have that STIP capacity so large that we're all STIP and that we're all STIP and don't federal funds. So what we've done is that in this funding round, we are anticipating right now that we may spend up to nearly half of our total expenditures will be STIP funds. But we know how problematic that is for many project sponsors that don't like to be put in a STIP and have to commit to a very late delivery year. So what I'm trying to signal in that discussion about the STIP and the federal funds is that as we look forward and we see what happens at the federal side, that they may very well adopt a new transportation bill, there may very well be a federal infrastructure stimulus, we may come back to you and say, hey, we would like to bring some new federal funds into this budget, and at the same time, just continue to roll forward that STIP balance that we've been carrying for the last couple of cycles.
So is this sort of a catch-up year on STIP? Is that how you would?
It may need to be, is the point, is that this cycle, if we can't see enough certainty or more stability on the federal funds side, that we can make with confidence to come back to the board and say, we think we can raise the estimated total of federal funds in this budget, that we'll have no choice to just continue to start to chip away at that rolling federal STIP balance that we've got and start to spend some of those STIP funds. But we wanted to mention this early because our sponsors, they do ultimately care if they get matched with STIP or federal funds. They'd much prefer federal funds. So if we are able to avoid that, we will try to avoid that. But otherwise, we want folks to know now that we may very well have to use our STIP balance as a way to meet these obligations that you commit to next spring.
Okay.
Matt, along those lines, and kind of alluding to you mentioned about the community design category, can you provide an overview of how SACOG funds projects? I think that might be helpful in terms of, it isn't just all RSTP and it goes to one and all community design goes to a project. You guys are able to be flexible and, in lack of a better term, cobble funds from different pots for projects, right? Could you provide an overview for that?
Sure. What Director said, I mean, essentially, what we try to do is some of that detail that's described in attachment A about the color of money or the type of revenue, we tend to only, we don't spend a great deal talking about that because what we're ultimately focused on is that policy commitment that we're funding your community design project. We do our best to try to match it with the least restrictive and most flexible revenue source for them to make that commitment. But the community design program is a good example of that. You'll next hear about the changes to the community design program for this year. But the community design program historically has been largely project awards have been matched with CMAQ, or it's basically air quality money, congestion mitigation, air quality funds. These air quality benefit funds, the restriction primarily is that you have to demonstrate you're offering air quality benefit. And what that means is that that helps define some of the selection considerations about the projects we fund. But we still, even with those projects that are showing some air quality benefit, we have a limited amount of community design projects that still aren't, we call it federal aid eligible, or they really can't spend federal dollars because there's a scope issue. So we have to have some flexibility, and we do that through a SACOG funding source it's a kind of analogous to your sales tax revenues that you manage at the City of Elk Grove. We call it the managed fund. It doesn't have much restriction, so it's very flexible. And those managed fund dollars are very helpful for us closing a budget gap on a project. So if it's not eligible for federal or state funds, we do our best to match it to managed funds, which are akin to what you guys do with sales tax revenue. And you can imagine how valuable they are to us because they help make the program come together. So in community design, that's an example where some of the policy recommendations you'll next hear about in the next staff report are really related to us being mindful that we only have a certain amount of this very flexible managed fund revenue to spread. And so we have to be careful about not overcommitting in terms of a policy standpoint to give awards to projects that we can't match with appropriate dollars.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good to know. I mean, there's flexibility there, but it also kind of illustrates the complexity of funding projects as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. I did want to know for a moment for Director Sander, for the second part of your question, I just wanted to make sure that we came back to that briefly, and that was related to how do we demonstrate that we're still making a difference, right? If it looks like budgets are not increasing and that there's a great deal of commitment still to be made. Is that, would you mind recapping what the essence of your questions?
Yeah, it's just the impression of the public that their gas tax went up, their car tax went up, and we see a declining amount of money available. Now, obviously, there's COVID effects in here, but still, it's a really tough message for people.
Yeah, and I think that essentially what we're encouraged by, right, is that for many of our local jurisdictions, at least when it comes to existing assets, that they've made some measured progress on showing that they're fixing potholes and they're able to buy transit vehicles that were long needed to be replaced. So there's some evidence at the local level that the SB1 dollars have made a big impact on their maintenance programs and be able to make a difference. But many of them have a big hole to dig themselves out of, right? They have a lot of deferred maintenance needs or a long list of transit vehicles they still can't find the money to replace. So it made a huge difference, the SB1 in 2017. But it just basically helped us to kind of somewhat stabilize a situation that otherwise would be even more dire today. Because if we were to not have SB1 as part of this budget and some of the background it provides the STIP, we would not have that rolling balance that I was describing to you, that we have a STIP funds that we keep carrying each cycle because we tend to exchange that with federal funds. We would have a much lower balance to deal with in this budget rather than being close to 200 million or what we had before, would probably be closer to 150, 160 million. So we've definitely seen, it's not seeing maybe the level of increase of total investment that many constituents might want to see, but it certainly stabilized a situation that would even be more dire today if we did not have that new source of revenue.
I think to Director Sanders' point, that somehow communicating that with the public would be worthwhile. They're not aware of what would have not gotten done had it not be for these additional funds. Right.
I think that's an excellent point. I know a lot of that interest came forward, like in the efforts earlier this year with the new Measure A discussions in Sacramento County and some of our other local agencies. Getting new locally derived dedicated sources of revenue is really critical if we're going to be able to not just stabilize a situation, but start to make meaningful progress towards keeping our assets better maintained, as well as making more strategic expansion investments. Because the federal and state side is, as a relative share of funding nationwide, is a declining share.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the directors? Jessica, do we have anybody who wishes to speak from the public?
It doesn't appear that we have anyone of our attendees raising their hand, and I have not received any email comments regarding this item, so no public comment.
Okay. Well, at this time, then I'll entertain a motion to support staff's recommendation on this.
Director Veerkamp moves it.
All right.
Sailor seconds.
Motion Director Veerkamp, second from Director Saylor. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Director Harris, please indicate your vote. However, I think he is absent right now. Director Harris, are you here? Absent. Director Joyner?
Aye.
Thank you. Director Peters?
Aye.
Director Samayoa?
Aye.
Director Sander?
Aye.
Director Saylor?
Aye.
Director Chenier?
Aye.
Director Slowey?
Aye.
Director Veerkamp?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings?
Aye.
Vice Chair Soon?
Aye.
Chair Cabaldon? Absent. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 6, the Community Design Policy Framework Adoption. Gregory Chu.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chu.
Thanks for having me. And Greg Chu, I'm the project coordinator for the Community Design Program. Matt mentioned it earlier. With me today, besides Matt, is also Garrett Ballard Rosa, in case there's any questions. So want to talk about the program, and what we're bringing before you is basically the outline or framework for how the program would work for this funding cycle. And then if the committee and then the board were to approve it, then we would draft up the guidelines that would have all the details and then release that in November. So I'm going to share my screen. Jessica, if you let me know when it makes it.
Greg, we could see your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Community Design Program, it was established, approved by the board in 2003 to set up some funds that promote the SACOG blueprint principles. And those 7 principles are housing options, transportation options, mix of uses, compact development, using existing assets, preserving natural resources, and we wanted things that we wanted to be able to fund projects in your local communities that promote development and implementation of the blueprint principles. So about every 2 years we have this program, and jurisdictions in the 4 counties apply for them. So what types of projects do we do? They're very similar to what Matt talked about in the regional program. They're capital projects for the most part, but we do have some money set aside for planning studies and also project development activities. Most of the monies are state and federal transportation funds, but there is a limited amount of SACOG managed funds that Matt mentioned that are very flexible. So who's eligible? Basically, it's the cities and counties, plus some transit districts if they have MOU with Caltrans to manage federal transportation funds. And we're only talking about the 4 counties, the Sacramento, Sutter, Yuba, and Yolo counties. The program's been in place. We're in the 9th round right now. We always get feedback on how the prior rounds go and what things we can do, in addition to comments in the last couple months. Things that the program's always looking to evolve. The one thing that we heard process for applying and being selected shorter, simpler. So the application process is that. there's always a balance between the reviewers who are looking at the projects having enough information to make good decisions on the projects that best meet the objectives of the program versus the amount of time the applicants need to take to prepare that information. So we hope we have a process that is significantly shorter and simpler. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we have two general categories of applicants. There are the competitive projects, and they can go up to $4 million. These are the ones that are looking for capital improvements, engineering, environmental, or right-of-way. And those are, because we have limited resources in the overall program, those are on a competitive basis. But for those jurisdictions that want a smaller project, perhaps even a planning project, historically we've had those jurisdictions, if they waive the right to compete for a bigger amount, they can receive $100,000. What we've heard from jurisdictions is that $100,000 is very limited. If we could increase that more, it might make that more palatable for asking for the non-competitive and being able to get projects more completed. So a jurisdiction that applies for a non-competitive is allowed one, and then they waive the right to go after the competitive funds. And again, the amounts would be increased for the minimum based, and they would be scaled depending on two planning factors, the MTP growth amount and the amount that jurisdictions get in their low and very low regional housing needs allocation process. That's what would scale the differences between how much a jurisdiction would get. And finally, a difference is, in placemaking and blueprint planning, we're always trying to mix and blend together housing with land use and transportation. So we will have a separate category for housing, a separate process, and a limited amount of money for that, for housing activities. That will come to you in a separate item through the board. One clarification in that we got a question about in the framework is there was some confusion about whether or not jurisdictions, depending on what category, whether or not they're applying for competitive or non-competitive, whether or not they'd be precluded from the housing. The answer is is that a jurisdiction, regardless of which type of community design application they submit, would be available or eligible to apply for this special housing category. Timeline.
I'm sorry, Greg, just to interrupt that. When you said the housing care, you talking about the REAP funding?
Yes, that's the regional early action planning program. We'll bring that up. Staff will bring that up to the board under the umbrella of community.
You're fading out, Greg. Is it just me? I think you're fading out.
No, he's going in and out a bit.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Greg, can I make a recommendation that you turn your video off?
Okay.
Or I can do it for you.
Sure. If you could do that for me, that'd be great.
Okay.
Soon, while he's doing that, and members of the committee, I will say on this point, we are working very hard to do, I think, something you would like us to do, which is to actually combine different funding programs that have very similar goals. So bear with us. But in terms of REAP and community design and the planning funds, we would actually like to have this not just be the siloed approach, but actually be something that is truly comprehensive and integrated, and even connects to some of the green zones that are out for nomination right now. So bear with us, but I do think this is a great test case, among others, of trying to take some of our funding sources and our state requirements and putting them together in a way that hopefully might work for all of you at the local level. So stay tuned. I did that just to buy time for Greg.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Hopefully my computer's cooperating now. So I'll just wrap up here with what the proposed timeline is if approved, then the guidelines would be released in early November. Because the application process is quite a bit shorter, Applications be due in mid-December. January, the short list of projects will be announced, and then those that are shortlisted to be offered an interview. And then we would bring that to the committee and the board in February and March for action. So with that, Garrett, Matt, and I would be glad to take any questions.
Chair Soon, this is Slowey. I move approval.
All right. Great. I saw I was trying to get off mute. Thank you, Director Slowey. Again, motion to
Mr.
approve.
Camp, seconds.
Jennings, we'll do
And
second.
Okay, I think I heard a Director Veerkamp first in that one. But before I go to the roll call vote, Jessica, any comments from the public?
There are no hands raised from the public, and I have not received any emails, so no comment. I do want to let you know that I have received a public comment for the receive and file item number 7, though, just a heads up.
Okay, we'll take that really quick after this. Roll call vote, please.
Absolutely, no problem. All right, please prepare to say your vote when I call your name. Director Harris? Absent. Director Joyner?
Aye.
Director Peters?
Aye.
Director Samayoa?
Aye.
Director Sander?
Aye.
Director Saylor?
Aye.
Director Chenier?
Aye.
Director Slowey?
Aye.
Director Veerkamp?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings?
Aye.
Vice Chair Soon?
Aye.
Chair Cabaldon? Absent. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. And so for the receive and file, the 2021 State Active Transportation Program applications that were submitted. Go ahead, Jessica. We have a comment, public comment.
Yes, I received a public comment from Helen O'Connell. She says, any trail should be wheelchair accessible and allow anyone to use it. That would mean in my case, a power outlet to charge my power chair, 110 outlet. Thank you very much.
Okay, noted. Thank you, Jessica. With that, if there's no other comments from the directors on other matters, next item up is adjournment. So have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, Darren.
Take care.
Good job.
Thank you.
Great job, Darren.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
Thank you, Darren.
Everybody.
See you.